right, boundaries has come up a lot lately. And I keep hearing things like, I need to set boundaries. I'm no good at setting boundaries, or like, oh, I keep crossing my boundaries. So today I want to talk about 3 common mistakes that are actually getting in the way and making it really hard to set boundaries. So if we can avoid these, things are going to get a lot easier with you and setting boundaries. And this is a topic, like boundary setting is a topic that I have covered for years. And I used to talk about it a lot and had a course devoted to setting boundaries with respect to parenting. So I used to talk about it in the context of dealing with kids. But once you understand the mechanics and the framework, that same framework actually applies to adults and makes it easy to set boundaries with adults too. So after this episode, if you are interested in learning more about exactly how to set boundaries, what to do when boundaries are crossed, or how to set boundaries without escalating conflict or getting your kids caught in the middle, I have a very short course at a very affordable price. The link is below this episode, so definitely go check that out and take advantage of that while it's still here. So now let's dive into the 3 common mistakes that people usually make when they're setting boundaries that actually make it a lot harder. So let's try to avoid these. And the first one is failing to plan. Now, I know this does not sound sexy, but in my previous life, I was an urban planner. I literally planned for a living. And on my office wall, I used to have a quote that said, failing to plan is planning to fail. Failing to plan is planning to fail. So we need to plan to set ourselves up for success. We tend to think that boundaries are like a one and done. We kind of say our boundary, we set our boundary, and our ex is just gonna listen to them. They're gonna know, they're gonna be like, okay, she told me once, okay, now I just will do the same thing, like time after time after time, and we're all good. And I will never cross that boundary. We kind of think it's gonna work like this, but it doesn't work like this at all. It doesn't work like this at all, because what we're essentially doing is we are training our ex how to treat us, probably after years of them treating us a different way. So we are building a new habit and we are learning a new skill set on upholding boundaries. So this is just going to take time to sort out, and that is a natural part of the boundary setting process. So I want you to expect that your ex is going to cross your boundary. And if you think about this like a little child and a boundary, like they're starting to learn the rules and learning to understand, and they might blow past that boundary by accident because they just forgot, or they're still learning the nuances of it, or they're going to push that boundary because they're going to test you to see how serious you are. So rather than getting upset that your co-parent is crossing a line or not listening to you, I want you to expect it. I want you to expect that your boundary is going to continue to be crossed for a little bit until you learn to uphold it. Okay, so crossing those boundaries pretty much guaranteed. So let's come up with a plan of what you will do when that boundary is crossed. Do not leave this to chance. Do not leave this to when you are like in the emotional moment of it, because you're not going to be able to do it. So come up with a plan of what you will do when they cross that boundary. Come up with this in advance and expect that your boundary is going to be crossed. And when it does, you just execute that plan. No big deal. No big deal. Now, I don't know if you caught it, but I did just briefly mention, and if you picked up on this, bonus points for you, that the plan needs to be something that you will do. It needs to involve something that you will do if your boundary is crossed, not what you will make the other person do, which leads me to mistake number 2, because people often think that boundaries are about getting the other person to change their behavior, but boundaries are not about controlling the other person. They need to focus on you and what you can control. This is a mistake, and probably the number 1 mistake that people make when it comes to setting boundaries, is that they think it's about getting the other person to change their behavior. And yes, ultimately, we probably want their behavior to change, but you can't control what they do. You can't control how they show up. The only person in this life that you can control is you, and it's your boundary that you are maintaining. They don't care about it. It is your boundary that you are maintaining. You are putting up a protective bubble space of self-respect. That is your job. So The plan needs to focus on what you can control. So for example, if your ex is always late picking up the kids, you can't control whether they are on time, whether they have an alarm going, whether they've given themselves enough time for traffic. You can't control any of that. You can only control how you respond, how you show up, your actions, your next steps. So in a situation like this, you can control how long you wait. You can control what you do with the kids. So I want you to think about what you can control in this situation that is in line with the boundary that you are trying to set. And it is not always black and white. It is not clear cut all the time exactly how to handle those situations, which is why the plan in advance is very important. But it's really important that you are not trying to impose consequences or punish another adult because they're not acting the way you want them to act. But I will say that if this has been a consistent pattern that you have been in, this pattern is working. Now, it might not be working for you, but it is working for someone. So when you change up your response, you interrupt the pattern. The pattern stops working in the same way. So what ultimately does tend to happen is that when you change your response, the other person does shift their behavior. They shift their actions. They shift how they're showing up or not showing up because they're getting a different response. So when we focus on what we can control, we're protecting our boundary regardless of what the other person is doing, but it does ultimately end up influencing their behavior too. So focus on what you can control because ultimately this is your time, your energy, your money, whatever it is, your self-respect that you are trying to protect, which leads me to my third mistake. And this is forgetting the bigger why. We need to understand the bigger why, the overarching reason that we want to uphold this boundary in the first place, that we want this boundary. It's not, or it shouldn't be, just to control someone else's just like inconvenience. No, this is about self-respect. This is about our nervous system. This is about something that is very important to us. So what is your bigger why? Why do you want your co-parent to show up on time? Why do you not want them to be passive aggressive? Why do you want them to talk to you in advance before they book a vacation with your kids? Why? Why? What is the bigger why? Because when you are clear on the why, enforcing and upholding boundaries becomes a lot easier. Because it's easy to say that you have a boundary, but when you're exhausted, when you're depleted, when you are pushed to your max, when emotions are high, when conflict is happening, it is very easy for you to just be like, okay, boundary out. And by boundary out, it's not like you're throwing away that boundary, but it's easy just to give in, to acquiesce to their request, to be like, oh, just this one time, I guess I could do that. It's easy in those moments because we're missing that bigger why. Or even what sometimes happens, we feel guilty of imposing a boundary because there are some consequences on our kids. It's inconvenient for them, or they might be upset, or you might be disappointing someone. So there's all these reasons why you might not be willing to uphold the boundaries, and expecting someone else to uphold boundaries for you is kind of unrealistic when you're not willing to uphold those boundaries for yourself. So understanding the why is going to be really, really helpful in those hard moments. And just to further nail down this point, I really want you to think about a child who is wanting a PB&J sandwich for dinner. And they are adamant that they are having this sandwich, and you are saying, no, I'm making something else for dinner. That's not a healthy choice. And this kid is just like, I want one. Can I have one? Can I have one? And it's the end of the day, and you're exhausted, and oh my goodness, can we just like be quiet for a moment? Stop bugging me. And this little persistent child just wears you down, and finally you're just like, fine. It doesn't even matter. Just like, okay, fine. It's not a big deal. But take that same child and now they have a peanut allergy. It doesn't matter how much persistence, how much noise, how much tears, how much tantruming they throw at you. There's no way they are getting that PB&J sandwich, because the bigger why is that you don't want them dead. Like, it's kind of a big deal. So this is why the bigger why is important. If it is strong enough, it doesn't matter what crap is thrown at you or what chaos, what is being asked of you. You're just gonna be like, no, my bigger why is making this a priority. And our bigger why is really focused when it's done properly, when it's not about trying to control someone else. It's not about being petty. It's not about like, oh, he did this, so I'm going to do this. It needs to come from a place of self-worth. It needs to come from a place of self-love and self-worth. Your time is important. Being treated well is important. Your nervous system is important. This is about protecting your self-worth and basically loving yourself. And I want you to also remember that you setting boundaries is ultimately going to teach your kids how to set boundaries with others. So if you get really good at this and master this, they're going to know how to respect themselves when others are trying to take advantage of them. So this is definitely something that you want to master. And there's obviously a lot more than just these 3 mistakes to setting boundaries. And like I said earlier, I have a very short course that will walk you through how to do this, because it is so important that we master this. It is so important that we protect our self-worth and our self-respect and show our kids how to do that as well. So there is a link below this episode to my course. It is very short, very affordable, and for a limited time, I'm offering 4 group coaching calls with this course at a very reduced price, because I know it's one thing to learn the material and a whole other thing to apply it in real life. So this course is going to walk you through the boundary setting process, how to navigate when your boundaries are crossed, and how to anticipate scenarios that will likely throw you for a loop and just completely obstruct your boundary setting process or your ability to set boundaries. So the link is below this video or in my bio, depending on where you're watching this episode. And remember to come up with a plan, to focus on what you can control, and to keep your bigger why in mind, and you will be well on your way to setting boundaries your ex will respect. So remember, as always, take it one step at a time, and I'm here cheering you on every step of the way, and I will see you next time.